You're just writing something that's already on the internet. If it wasn't on the internet, AI wouldn't be able to write that blog post because it's using training data, right? That's already out there. And so, the middle part is your responsibility. The crux of the thought leadership, if you're trying to be a thought leader, is your responsibility.
Whatever your current work and life situation, I would imagine you have somehow in the last few years been affected by the exponential rise of artificial intelligence, whether it is through utilizing ChatGPT, whether it is desperately trying to get through to a company to talk to someone and getting the AI chatbot instead, or whether it's one of the numerous apps that are popping up on the daily to help make us more productive. There is no way that life is not now impacted by AI. And of course, that is only going to continue. It is not going anywhere. And to honor that, I thought I would bring in one of the world's leading experts on AI, innovation, and the future of work. And that is the amazing Dan Chuparkoff. Dan was a technology leader at Google, McKinsey, and numerous other places, leading transformations for teams in every industry through 3 decades of technological change. Dan's superpower is making complex things simple and useful. And now, as an AI educator and an expert on innovation, he is sharing his thoughts with us. Dan 1000% believes that AI can support us as humans, help our productivity, help us become more self-aware if we use it in an ethical way. And that is a big part of what we're talking about today. Dan and I are both sharing ways that we use AI in our business and in our lives. We talk about the ethics of it. We talk about the context and really the fact that it's only as potent and powerful as the input and prompts that we give, and also from what we take away from it and go away and action. So this is a jam-packed episode. I'm thrilled to be able to bring Dan's expertise. He is many things, and he's also an introvert who makes a living as a keynote speaker. So he knows very, very much about managing his energy too. I know that whatever situation you are in, you're going to get so much from this episode, as I did. So please enjoy the wonderful Dan Chuparkoff. Dan, thank you so much for joining me. I have been very excited about this conversation for a number of reasons, but how are you doing today?
I'm good, and thank you for having me. I'm excited about the conversation too. Looking forward to diving into all things.
And you are, I believe, in or near Chicago.
That is correct. I'm in the Chicago suburbs, Midwest American guy. I've been here most of my life, but I've lived in a bunch of different cities as well. So
Chicago is, and people always laugh when I say this, my favorite city in the world.
Wow. That's a bold statement.
It is a bold statement. And then people are like, have you not traveled much? I'm like, oh no. And I'm reeling off like Asian cities, Australia, all across Europe. And they're like, Chicago. I'm like, yeah, Chicago has the best energy.
Okay.
It has the best people.
That's true.
And it has the best food.
Yes, all true statements.
So yeah. So I'm kind of living vicariously through you today.
That's amazing. Amazing. Yeah. Chicago's a wonderful city. It's like a big city with all the big city activities and energy and stuff to do and all of that. But it's also got the sort of like Midwest, like people vibe where people are nice to each other. And, there's some crime and stuff, but it's scattered around like any normal big city. And so I love it. I don't think I'll ever leave. It's a pretty great city to be living in.
I don't blame you. I think I expected a smaller version of New York when I first went. And it felt like New York with better architecture and cleaner sidewalks and friendlier people.
Yeah, that's a great way to describe Chicago in general.
Apologies to all the New Yorkers that I've just offended by mistake. But anyway, thank you for joining us from Chicago this morning for you. This is a topic that I don't think anyone can escape. Whatever people's thoughts are on AI, I think most people have come to accept that it's not going anywhere.
Most people. I think some people would like to think of ways of shutting it down or slowing it down or something like that. But but it's a pretty powerful, amazing, helpful tool. And so as long as we figure out how to manage some of the things that are scary for people, I think it will be an amazing force for humanity. When I was at Google, Sundar Pichai used to say AI is going to be more important for the world than fire.
Wow.
That's a pretty bold statement. So, we'll see what happens, but I think it's useful and I use it every day.
So where did you first become involved on an active basis within your career in AI?
Yeah, I think, when you dig into what AI actually is, you'll see that AI is really just machine learning. It's like looking at a bunch of data and trying to identify patterns, like the most common thing to do next, given this problem. So, I started using machine learning in the 90s. We were looking at grocery store traffic data, purchase data for grocery stores and consumer packaged goods companies, and trying to find patterns in that data to help packaged goods companies or grocery store companies like market their stuff and anticipate patterns in consumer behavior. And so that was in the 90s. Then we were looking at shopping data and trying to figure out like what's the most common popular thing this person might buy next. That's really exactly what's happening now. When you ask ChatGPT a question, it's answering that same question. What's the most popular likely answer to this question? And so if you really dig into what I've been doing, it's been a 30-year journey. But generative AI, like this language model stuff, like ChatGPT answering questions, that really started happening in about 2020 when I was at Google. We started to notice that language models got dramatically better all of a sudden. They were moderately useful before, but all of a sudden they could answer questions on any topic in any subject with like mastery level, maybe not expert level, but like really great answers to questions, whatever we could think of. And that changed the way we worked at Google almost overnight.
So when ChatGPT became publicly available, which I think, would that have been about 2022?
The end of November of 2022, yes.
So as an entrepreneur, it was a big deal. People were buzzing about it. Everyone started going, oh, you can get ChatGPT to write all your content and all of this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I started to play with it on the free version in, I think, early 2023. I scrolled back on my chats to see what the earliest one.
Yeah.
And it's okay. It was impressive at the time. It was okay. And I'd ask it some questions and it would give me some answers. I use it daily now for various things. I would say, in my experience, in the last 6 months, it's gotten exponentially better. Like frighteningly so, in that I don't even need to prompt it a lot of the time now. It knows what I want.
Right. Yeah, it is not just anecdotally getting exponentially better. It's empirically getting exponentially better. When it first came out, the version of the algorithm that was being trained with 175 billion examples of content, right? 175 billion things written on the internet, fed in there to train the algorithm. The version of it that came out in April of last year, so almost exactly a year ago today, that version was trained with 13 trillion examples.
Okay.
Right. And so it's just getting better because we're feeding more stuff into it. And I'm not doing anything, but it's getting better because it's learning more stuff about the world from more diverse sources of information. And we're, they're finding the places that are more reliable for information versus the places that are less reliable. And they're sort of, filtering through that data a little better than they did at the beginning.
So reliability, I think, is an interesting one because it's very easy, I think, especially for younger people, I'm going to say, that maybe the millennials and younger that grew up without, I had a completely analog childhood and teenhood. Mobile phones, the internet kind of started to come around when I was about 18. But for people that have always had a device and a connection to the internet, it's very easy for them to accept that that is fact. That what we're presented with is fact. And we've seen this with fake news and, echo chambers on social media. And for me, I have a bit of a skeptical brain, which is, maybe a good thing. So when I get a response from ChatGPT, I don't necessarily 100% trust it. And I have to employ some critical thinking to be like, is this correct? Or should I go and fact check this somewhere else? Or, does this feel right? I got it to do a calculation for me because I'm really bad at math and ChatGPT is pretty good at math. So I got it to calculate when my current mortgage rate expires and I need to refinance. Based on my rate, based on how much I pay each month, and based on my outstanding amount, what would I owe in 2.5 years? So I was like, okay, great. This feels really good. It's going to work that out in seconds. And it did. And it said, oh, yeah, you're not paying enough. You're not paying enough to cover your capital and interest. And you're going to have an extra like $100,000 of debt in 2 years. And I was like, I don't think that's correct. Could you run that calculation again? And it came back and you went, oh, no, sorry, you're absolutely right. And then gave me the correct calculation.
Right.
How common is that? How common is it that it will just throw something out there that someone could take as absolute fact when in fact it's just gone off on as we'd say in the UK?
Yeah. So there's a couple things I'll dig into there. The first is, GPTs are language models, not mathematical models, right? And so they're pretty good at math, but they're not actually doing math. They're like doing language. Like trying to write out the answer to your question and using probability, not math, figure out what the numbers are in the sentence that it's constructing. And so most people, if they asked a question about their mortgage, might have some answer to that question, right? The question, what do most people have left in 2 years with their mortgage, has nothing to do with the question you're asking, but that's the question ChatGPT is answering. So first, be really cautious when you're asking a language model math questions. There is a mathematical model called Wolfram Alpha, which is doing like AI stuff, but for mathematics. And it's great. And it will definitely get that question right. So I'll send you a link.
Thank you.
For listeners that want to check that out. But so be exceptionally cautious when you're using math inside of your ChatGPT experience. The second thing, though, is even if we weren't talking about math, we're asking it some random question about a bird we saw or the strategy we're trying to create or the sales email we're trying to write. AI is going to give you some suggestions, and it will have some probability of error. Maybe that is 99.9, maybe it's 99.999% accurate, but there's always that 0.001. And depending on the question you're asking it and how commonly that question is discussed on the internet in public places, that error changes. It gets dramatically worse. Right? If you're asking it a new weird question that only you and your company discuss, the AI error is going to be very, very, very bad, very high. And so you're going to need to check it at random, undiagnosable degrees of difficulty. So as you start using AI, know that it could be wrong sometimes. We don't have any examples of technology that works flawlessly every time. Right. And so with other kinds of technology, there's a team of people sitting there watching for mistakes, watching for crashing servers or security issues, and they're jumping in to fix those weird problems. With you and AI, it's just the two of you. So you are the person that's jumping in and looking for weird problems to diagnose and fix. A lot of kids these days won't realize that. You're right. And they will report facts as facts that aren't actually true. But also, if you ask any random stranger a fact, they'll give you an answer and it might not be true, right? AI might have a better fact retelling accuracy than most of the people you interact with. So we might not be in worse shape than we're already in.
It's so interesting you mentioned kids, and we've said about this where people have just been brought up in a digital world. What are the implications with AI now for students? I know a lot of teachers are complaining, oh, I'm getting the same essay, and it's obvious that people have run it through there. But what are the longer term implications for that? What impact do you think it's going to have on us as humans and our ability to be innovative, to critically think, etc., in the future?
I think it will help us because we will spend less time doing the non-critical thinking stuff. So we'll have more time thinking strategically about how to solve new weird problems or how to imagine a different future that doesn't exist yet. Right now, we're spending so much time with like basic information processing, taking this info and putting it in this system, or double checking these two systems to make sure they're still in sync, or trying to remember the thing we heard in that meeting 9 weeks ago. We're spending all this time with stuff that AI can now do for us much more reliably. And so that should free up some of our time to do other things. That's going to create two problems. First, our schools are primarily teaching us fact recall right now. Here you read this history book, remember all these important dates and people, and let's answer those questions on the test. That's not a useful skill anymore, right? Your AI assistant will be able to tell you any fact on the fly with some margin of error, right? That's not the thing schools will need to teach, right? Schools are going to need to shift to critical problem solving. I was talking to an English teacher in the high school near my house in our school district here, and he was asking that same question, like, what do I do? How do I know if students are cheating? And I said, you might be giving them the wrong assignment for 2025. Maybe say, write an essay and let AI help you, and then find 5 things in that essay that are wrong, that AI gave you the wrong information for it. That's the skill students need. Like writing a random paper from scratch isn't a thing people will do anymore. If you are doing it, if somebody tries to write a strategy for my company from scratch without using AI to help them, they're fired.
I love it. But it's this idea of like co-creation and using it as something that can support us. Like for me, I'm someone that I need a lot of like wide open space for thinking. Mm-hmm. That's how my brain works. I don't do very well in admin and busy work. Right. But some people do, and I have a wonderful assistant. She's great at all of that. Right. But it's not for me. It bogs me down. And so I need a lot of white space. So to be able to use something like ChatGPT I use it to kind of brainstorm with, almost to give me inspiration and ideas. So it's not like, hey, write this email, because I still write my own emails. But it's like, oh, knowing what you know about me and my audience, give me 3 topics that you think would be a really great newsletter for this week. And I can see something and go, oh yeah, I'm going to go with that.
Right. Yeah, that's a great way of leveraging AI. There's something called the AI sandwich. Right? It's where at the beginning you have a project, like you're going to write some great content this week. At the beginning of that project, you have the brainstorming task, right? You need ideas. You want to vet your ideas. And AI is great at that, right? AI has an infinite number of ideas, and you could say, give me 10 ideas for content this week, and it will give you 10 ideas instantly. And then you can use the context in your head to decide, like, of those 10, what feels right for me right now? You pick the one that you like and you write some batch of content. Then you go back and you say, hey, I wrote this thing. Can you help me make it a little bit more concise and clear? Can you polish the rough edges for me? And so it does the bottom layer, right? Where it gives you a rough draft or some ideas or some prompts or some questions you should think about. Then you write that stuff that's in your head. And then the top layer of bread is the polish, where it's like, Grammarly on steroids. It's going to, make your sentence structure a little bit better. It's going to remove the passive voice if you want that, or add it in if you want that. Right. And that's the partnership that you will have with AI, I think.
One of my entrepreneur clients said this. She's actually a great writer and she has a lot of ideas. And she wrote something and then she ran it through to say, hey, can you tidy this up? Can you just polish this? And she was almost a bit shocked and she went, my God, it was great. It was like, it came out way better than I could have written it. But the crux of it, the content, the heart of it was still her. It was what she'd written.
Right. Yeah. And that's, I think, an important part that people should remember, because if you do the opposite, if you give AI the middle part of the work, right, you give AI the bottom layer, you say, I have this one idea for this thing. Please write a blog post for me on this subject. And then it writes it. And then you take a look at it and change 3 things maybe, and then publish it. Then you're just writing something that's already on the internet. If it wasn't on the internet, AI wouldn't be able to write that blog post because it's using training data, right? That's already out there. And so, the middle part is your responsibility. The crux of the thought leadership, if you're trying to be a thought leader, is your responsibility.
So let's talk about the ethics then, because essentially what you're saying there is, if you're getting ChatGPT to write you a blog post, it could be plagiarizing someone else's blog post that already exists.
Yep.
So where is, for creators, let's just say, for people that are, like you say, want to be thought leaders, or they're posting on LinkedIn, or they're, blogs, newsletters, they're putting something out there. Where, because I know a lot of my clients feel this, like, where is the ethical line? How much is okay versus how much is, I've just, gotten a robot to write this for me and posted it on the internet and it's nothing to do with me.
Right. So a couple things in there. I think the first is, if I were to write a poem with ChatGPT's help, and I said, whatever, I want a poem about walking in the woods and the sun is shining and I'm, whatever, blah, 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 and it writes me a poem, then I think it's probably going to pull information from some other poets, but it's probably thousands of other poets pulling tiny little slivers of information from each of them, right? But, and I think that's okay. I think actually people are also just doing that, right? If I was inclined to write poetry, I would have looked at a bunch of other poets and I would have learned from them, and I would have used the stuff I learned from them to influence how I write poetry. And that's all AI is doing. However, if I instead said, write a poem in the style of Robert Frost about walking in the woods, and I come up to a fork in the path and I'm going to, take, that's very clear copyright infringement by me, because I gave AI the instructions to steal Robert Frost's work, right? So that's where I think the line is, right? The copyright infringement is in the prompt. It's not in the AI, right? If you say, take this other person's work and mimic it, then I think you're stealing. If you just let AI take little tiny bits and pieces from everything it's learned in the world, I think that's exactly what people are also doing. And I think that's okay. But, everyone will have a different interpretation of that line. That's where I think mine is. And I think if there's ever a copyright court case in the courts, I think they will say, what did the person type in to that prompt? And then, we'll see that person said very clearly, actually, there is a court case, New York Times, right? New York Times is suing ChatGPT because it was copying content from the New York Times, right? And creating an article in the style of the New York Times. In that court case document, it says the prompt, and the person typing the prompt in said, give me an article in the style of the New York Times about this topic. And here's a New York Times article about that topic. He posted the article into the prompt. That's not ChatGPT's fault.
The person could have recreated the article without ChatGPT. It just would have taken them longer and it would still have been copyright.
Right. Exactly. And so, there are ethical lines that we should be careful of, and we should probably rewrite copyright law for a more modern age. All those things will happen. But I think, generally, if you're just asking it generalized questions, I think that's probably fair use. And if you're getting super specific, trying to say, create a cartoon profile picture of me in the style of Disney, I think that's stealing. And I don't think you should do that.
There's a couple of things you said there that really resonate with me. One being that we're all drawing inspiration from other people. And when I first started out as a coach 6-7 years ago, I remember looking around and all of the things that I wanted to talk about with, personal development and psychology, a lot of other people were talking about them. And I'd be like, oh, well, I can't say that because that person's said it.
Right.
And I can't do that because that person, referenced that. And I remember having a coach at the time who said, we're all recycling ideas, but
Right.
fundamentally we are portraying them with our own energy and with our own take, our own thought leadership, as you and I might say, on it and presenting it to people. So I present my information to introverts and therefore it's presented in a slightly deeper way because we're deep thinkers, right? But there could be another coach who's very extroverted and, the brand's very bright and it's all, but essentially we're probably helping people achieve the same thing and we're probably talking about the same topics, but in a different way. And the second thing that came up is music, as you were saying that, the amount of copyright claims musicians have, and ultimately people saying there are only so many notes and there are only so many variations of those notes. So eventually you're going to have a song and it's going to sound like someone else's song.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So these are tricky things in the world for us to figure out, for sure. I think though the world wants multiple people talking about the same thing because they want to hear how all those thoughts sort of converge together. If I listen to 9 different people talk about leadership, I'm going to take good bits and pieces from each of them and create the leadership style that works for me. And that's true of any topic. It's helpful to have diversity of thought with different people talking about the same topic, but with their own flair, their own experience, their own, mindset. All that stuff is helpful, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And for me, as someone that creates content and creates this podcast and newsletters, I like to listen to different podcasts and read different content and see other people's opinions. A lot of the time I go, no, I don't like that, or I don't agree with that, or that doesn't resonate with me. But I think we have to be open-minded to the nuance, which is almost what we're saying here. It's like copyright laws are very black and white for the last 200 years, and now we need a bit of nuance and we need a bit of critical thinking, and these different skill sets are going to become more and more important for us as we go forwards.
Yeah, for sure. So
when you think about AI in, say, 5 years, what would you love to see, or what do you think you'll see?
I think AI is moving so fast. 5 years is super far away. But what I think will actually happen is we won't even say AI anymore in 5 years. It's just going to be built into all the things we use. Our inbox will just automatically summarize messages for us. Our document creation tools will just automatically give us suggestions. Our search engines will just have chat, conversational, search built into them. All the software that you buy will just have AI in it. Every software developer is already working on putting it into their tools, whatever those tools are. Our thermostats have AI in our CRM systems and our video meetings. All these things will just be part of it's the plumbing now. And so we'll start talking about it less and less, but it'll be there more and more. But I think the thing that's dramatic about the way we collaborate, I think will start changing. Like at the beginning of this conversation, you talked about, bringing your Fathom note taker into the conversation, because having a note taker is super helpful, right? We used to sit in meetings writing words down on little books, right? In little books, little notes that we maybe looked at occasionally. We write maybe 0.05% of the conversation down in little notebooks. Our ability to transcribe what was said in meetings is horrible, right? We're terrible at note taking. AI note takers are going to be dramatically better at it. We'll bring them to every meeting. We'll have this conversational repository of all the things we discussed. We'll be able to search that repository quickly. It'll bring it in to, we'll be writing a document and our AI note taker will just jump in and say, hey, don't forget you had that conversation with Emma-Louise, right? That would fit really good here. Like, bring some of those thoughts. The AI note taking, I think, will be dramatic. Like, most of the time in the world, we are spending talking to colleagues at work, right? 2/3 of our time at work is spent interacting with our colleagues or customers in some way. And most of that is just lost intellectual property right now without note takers, just evaporates into the air. And we have the same conversations over and over again. And that's going to go away. 5 years from now, that will be extinct.
I can see that. It's made a huge difference to my podcast admin because I've always got a pen and paper at the side of the desk. But as we're having this conversation, I love to be really present. I love to be really focused, listening, active listening. I'm thinking about what I'm going to ask you next, where we can take the conversation. When I used to have to write notes, because I knew I was going to have to go and write the show notes, and I would either write notes during the interview, or I would have to go back and listen to the interview again, and which takes an hour, which if I was doing that 4 times a month, is a lot. So then I would feel like I'm down here writing and, the guests talking and I'm kind of not that present. Having an AI note taker was game changing for that, because when I go now to write the show notes or to record your intro, it's all there. It's pulled out the key things that oh yeah, we talked about that. Oh yeah, great. We mentioned that. And it means that I can write more accurate show notes. I can create a better intro to tell people what we're going to be talking about. So for me, that's where AI has really enhanced business.
Yeah. I completely agree. I think I'm already starting to see very real like productivity gains from that. It also helps me make some of the stuff I say better over time. Cause I say something like, I just use that Robert Frost example for copyright. I've talked about copyright infringement a bunch of times, maybe, I don't know, 6 or 7 times. And I never used Robert Frost. And I actually like that. I just thought of it now, right? I usually use Coldplay as an example. Coldplay music, copyright infringement, whatever. That's not as good as an example. Robert Frost was way better. And so like because I could like look at the evolution of that thought in my head over time, I can see it getting better. Like I can go back to all my notes and like replay them and see like, what did I do in that second time that was better? What's the best time I ever used that copyright infringement analogy? And I can sort of learn the random things I say and watch them get better over time. And that's a really cool feature of note-taking that we never really had before.
So overall, and I'm literally asking this for a friend. I have a wonderful friend who will be listening to this, and she has been down the rabbit hole of AI, and she's followed some creators that are maybe not so positive about it. And she's definitely had some concerns and some fatalistic ideas, although she also enjoys to use it and benefit from it for her business. And when I said that I was interviewing you, she said to me, does he think it's a good thing? Is he positive about it for the future? And I was like, I believe so, but I'm going to ask that question. Are you positive about the future with AI?
I'm very, very positive about it. I think it will do some remarkable, amazing things in the world, like allow us to cure cancer.
Wow.
We won't be able to do that as normal people writing numbers on sheets of paper. It's too hard of a problem. AI will allow us to do things like that, right? Solve really, really important problems in the world that save lives. Second thing that makes me optimistic, AI can't actually do anything, right? It's just a big database, right? You can look stuff up in that database anytime you want, and it might say, hey, kill all the humans. But AI, just because a line in a database says kill all the humans doesn't mean AI can do anything with that information. Now, a person that just follows the instructions that they get out of AI blindly might accidentally kill all the humans, right? But there are people out there aggressively trying to harm us all the time already anyway. They don't need AI giving them those accidental suggestions. That doesn't make that problem any worse. There will be people that blindly follow AI's instructions without critical thought, without adding their own layer of ethics. And that's bad. That's not an AI problem. That's a person education problem, right? People should use AI responsibly. And if people aren't doing things responsibly in the world, that will create some harm. And some of us will have to work aggressively to try to mitigate those risks, right? But we're working really, really hard to make sure that like there's always a fail-safe button. People should use AI responsibly. You shouldn't put AI in an endless loop, letting it talk to your customers completely without you. I think that's a mistake. But letting AI help you as a co-creator, as an assistant, those things I think are dramatically helpful for the world, and the world will be a better place because of those things.
I have a very analog metaphor for what you just said, in that in the early 90s, I got very big into the Beatles. I discovered the Beatles, as most teenagers do at some point.
Yeah.
And so I read The Catcher in the Rye. And I could not see anything in that would make me want to kill John Lennon. And yet John Lennon's assassin said repeatedly that it was there in The Catcher in the Rye to make him want to commit that murder.
I haven't read that book in a long time, and now you make me want to crack that book back open.
It's a great book. It's still a great book all these years later. But I remember being like, oh, I really don't see anything in there that would make me want to shoot someone. So again, it's not a book problem. It's the reader problem.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And if it wasn't that book, if that book didn't exist, there was some seed inside that guy whose name I forget.
Yeah, I can't remember his name either.
Yeah, it doesn't. He shouldn't get airtime anyway. No. But like, there was something inside that book that was like inside that guy that was blooming. And if it wasn't Catcher in the Rye, it would have been some other catalyst that pulled it out of him. And so, yeah, I don't think it's an AI problem, but I do think this is a message for people as we start getting AI-powered apps that can just do stuff for us. People should remember there's always that 0.001% of possibility of error. And in some contexts, it's not 0.001%. It's like 20%, right? Probability of error. And so my recommendation for people as they start using AI assistants is let your AI do a bunch of work for you today and line it up. Like, let your AI assistant say, think of 25 things that you might do for me tomorrow. And at the end of today, we're going to talk about that list of 25. And I'm going to say, these 23 look great. Go ahead and do those. But these two are kind of weird. I don't know what you were thinking there. Don't do those two. Right? You should always have like a checkpoint conversation with your AI if it's going to do work for you. And people that don't have a checkpoint conversation with AI, I think, are making a mistake. Whether that's customer service bots or CRM automation or nuclear power plant administration, like, you need a checkpoint at least at the end of every day to talk through with your AI assistant what it's planning on doing, and so you can make the decisions for it to keep it aligned with you morally, ethically, responsibly, whatever that means to you.
I think that's such a good point of it can't actually do anything. I think because it's so effective now and so fast and it has such a vast repertoire that it can, it feels like we're conversing with it in a very human way. That's a great reminder. And when you said about like a nuclear power station, thinking about nuclear weapons, people are like, oh, AI is going to like push the button and destroy us all. But what you're saying is, no, it can't actually do that. We would still need humans to carry out that action.
Right. Yeah, for sure. It's just a big Excel spreadsheet. That's all it is. And every possible question is written in the spreadsheet, and every possible answer with a probability number next to it. Like, that's all it is. And you can look stuff up in that spreadsheet anytime you want, and that's amazingly powerful. But like, it can't do anything.
I love that. And you said you use it every day, which I want to dive into some more to give people just some inspiration of ways they can use it. But I followed one of your prompts. You popped a prompt in the Impact 11 community a while ago that we're both in about asking AI about yourself and what it finds about you on the internet. So it was pretty accurate. I was quite pleased with what it pulled up. It used good sources. It used my website. It used the podcast. It used another podcast I'd been on, a blog post, something else. And then I asked it to say something about me that is almost like a compliment that I would never have heard. So tell me something about myself that I'd never really thought of myself in that way. And it said that despite my constant, how did it word it? Like constant growth and transformation and ambition, all that people sometimes miss that because I'm so calm. I was like, that's so interesting. That's probably true because I'm generally quite calm and grounded, but there's always a lot going on. And I was like, wow, that's quite impressive.
That is pretty impressive.
And the one that you posted in the community where you'd asked, like, hey, tell me about myself, essentially.
Right.
And it was so accurate.
Yeah, I'll also talk about how with the first time I asked it, it wasn't that accurate. I mean, it was accurate, but what I'll say to caveat that was, I'm 55 years old. I've done a lot of things in the world. I did some things in the 90s that have nothing to do with what I do now. And when I say now, tell me about Dan Chuparkoff, I want it to tell me about how I'm an AI educator and an innovation keynote speaker. And I left my job at Google and now I'm independent and I talk about, public speaking and all this stuff. But AI doesn't know, like when AI looks at the whole internet over the last 25 years or however long the internet has really been there, it factors every one of those years in equally. And so when it finds stuff I did in 2004 and it finds stuff I did in 2024, it like mixes those together into the same pile. And so it was pulling a lot of stuff from the early 2000s from my history into the answer to that question. And that was great. It was all true, but it didn't have an understanding of the chronology. And when I asked the question, what does Dan do? I have an understanding of the fact that my career has been a progression. And what I really mean is the newer stuff, like what am I doing now? What have I progressed to? And you can ignore some of the stuff that I did earlier in my life. And AI didn't understand that at all. And so to combat that problem, because I want an AI by the people that hire me, right? I had to make a lot more content about the newer stuff that I was making, right? I had to like overshadow some of the older stuff with volume because AI doesn't know anything about time. It only knows volume. And that's an interesting thing that I uncovered about AI. If you're in marketing, you might want to know that and play around with it a little bit.
That's like when I was in air traffic control, we would have subconscious decisions or micro decisions that we'd call them. And for every single aircraft that passed through our airspace, we would be making decisions for it. It's, literally thousands and thousands of decisions an hour.
Yeah.
But some of them are so subtle that they're made and not really registered. And that is what you're saying about if I Googled you and I saw, this article from Dan Chuparkoff in 2014, my brain's going to filter that out because I'm going to say, well, no, that's not really now. And then if I see something that was published last week, I'm going to recognize that that's probably more relevant and valuable. But that's not a conscious decision. That's just something we do. That's the way the human brain filters things.
Right. And no matter how good you get at prompt writing, when you go into ChatGPT and write a paragraph of information about the question you're asking, you're never going to put all the context in your head into that prompt. You have so much context in your head, right? Your prompt is always going to be inadequate. So when you're asking AI questions, ask it for lots of answers, right? Give me 25 things that I might write a blog post about this week. And then you look at that list of 25 things and pick the one out that matches the context in your head. Because you're right, you're using all of those micro decisions. I definitely want to talk more another day about air traffic control because that seems like fascinating. But all of us are making lots and lots and lots of decisions every day using all that context in our head. And AI doesn't know anything about that context. So my rule is never let AI make any decisions for me, right? Anytime I'm asking a prompt, I say, if you have to make any decisions along the way here, tell me what they are so I can make sure you're making the same ones I would make. I just don't ever let AI make my decisions because I know, there's a lot of stuff in my head that helps influence how I make decisions. And I don't feel like writing that all down.
I watched a training on AI last year, I think it was,
Mhm.
and she had a really good point similar to yours there of if you're given a prompt at the end to say, do you have any clarifying questions to be able
Mhm.
to carry this out? Because
Right.
you might feel like you've given all the information, but if there's a big chunk, you're going to get the response and feel like, well, that's not very accurate. And I've
Right.
used
Right.
that and it's come back and said, yes, can you clarify? And asked me like 3 really good questions. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
interesting. So it's like this, that's when I say like a brainstorm. That's when I feel like it's a back and forth.
Right. 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 Yeah. It for sure is, I think, when the easiest way to think about AI right from the start is it's just the new search engine. Anytime I was going to Google and saying, like, what's my favorite color? Google give me an answer, and I would just trust that answer. And now you have to have a dialogue with it. If you ask one question and get one answer back, you're probably using AI incorrectly. Right? If you ask AI one question and then say, I don't really like that. That's not really what I was thinking. Here's why I don't like that answer. Can you try again with these things in mind? And then it gives you another answer. And then you say, I think that's true, but what's the source? I don't know if I believe that. And then it gives you the source. Once you get to 3 or 4 back and forths with AI, then you're probably doing it the way it was designed to work, I think.
So before we wrap up,
Mhm.
I would love to know ways that you use AI in your everyday life that even maybe a few years ago wouldn't have been habit, but now are just so natural to you and time saving that they're just part of your daily routine.
For sure, the most frequent thing I do is take a bit of content that I'm writing and I put it in and I say, can you make this a little bit more concise and clear? Right? I will sometimes over explain some points that maybe I don't need to in an email message or, the opening of a blog post or in the script for a particular slide for in a presentation I'm writing. So that's the most common thing. I'm using it to help me make my writing more crisp and clear and concise and persuasive or engaging or whatever. That I do a couple times a day. I think that's my most common thing. I'm trying to have it help me to become a better writer. I also don't just put it in and then copy paste and I like read it and say, "Oh yeah, you're right. That would have been better." So that next time I write, I've learned. So I'm not using it as just a content polisher. I'm using it as a content teacher so I become a better writer. That's my most common use case. The second thing I do really frequently is I work with teams in lots and lots of industries to help them figure out how AI might change their work. And so I go into AI and I ask a question like, what are 10 ways that AI might change the work of people that build woodworking machinery? Like I have a saw in my workshop, but outside of that, I don't know anything about woodworking machinery manufacturing. But I need to know something if I'm going to talk to these people with some, insights. And so AI helps me inform me about like how their work might change. What kind of work do they even do? Like what does it take to build CNC machines for industrial, workshops at scale. Like, those are things that AI is helping to inform me about in a very niche way. If I went to college and took a class on manufacturing, I would have, for 4 months, I would have learned all about the manufacturing and supply chain process. And that would be great. It would help make me a good consultant or, manufacturing leader or general business leader. But like AI can drill all the way down into woodworking machinery manufacturing, and that's amazing. As a research assistant, that's my second best use.
I love your choice of language. It can drill down into woodworking machinery. It's perfect. So, okay,
I
brilliant.
should use that.
You
I should
should
then
use that
I
along with
mean,
Robert Frost. Yeah, you should definitely use that. So this idea that even like you said, if you were to Google that, even if you were to Google, woodwork manufacturing and, how it's going to be impacted by AI, you would have to sift through so many results and they may not be relevant. Like we say, they may be old, all of this. That to me is where the efficiency of something like ChatGPT is, where you're asking a very specific niche question and you get the responses all in one place, rather than you would have literally spent hours going through blogs and reports and company data and all of these things. And then it's delivered there to you in a few seconds.
Right. And it's a mixture of lots of people's thoughts, which might give you more diversity of thinking on a particular subject. The old way, before AI, we went to search and we typed a question like, tell me what's going on in manufacturing for woodworkers. And it would have given me 10 answers, right? Or 7 and some ads, right? The person who's at the top of that list, right? The non-ad person, right? The person at the top of the list that I probably would have clicked on probably would have been the company that has the most money to spend on marketing and content creation, right? And so the companies with the most money are at the top of the search results, because getting to the top of the search results means having a whole team of people that's constantly creating backlinks and writing articles and creating blog posts and doing case studies, and all that stuff takes money. And so you don't get diversity of thought, you get purchased, right, exposure. And that's not that different than ads. And so it might be true that AI gives us more diversity of thought. It equalizes the playing field a little bit for thought leaders and content creators. Maybe that will go away as people try to monetize AI and it'll take money again. And maybe people will figure out how to game the AI training and they'll create all the same problems we had with search. But for right now, you get more diverse combination of people's perspectives on any topic, and that can be kind of cool.
I love that. Dan, thank you so much. I can't believe we've been talking for almost an hour. I could have talked to you for another hour, I think.
No.
I'm going to share all of your links in the show notes and anything that we referenced so people can come and follow along with you and connect and find out more about what you do. And before I let you go, I'm going to ask you, ask all of my introverted guests. As an introvert, running a business and using tech regularly and all of these things, traveling regularly as a speaker, what is one practice or habit that you have that can really help you to manage your energy as an introvert?
I think the most important thing I've learned, about being an introvert is that people just like me. I just try to be the genuine human that I am. And people like collaborating with me because of that. And so don't try to be an extrovert because you think extroverts are more successful. Don't try to be outgoing because you feel like being the center of attention will get you more business or more attention or whatever. You be a genuine, good human and be authentic to yourself. And that will get you way farther than anything else in the world.
And takes a lot less energy than trying to be something that you're not.
Yeah, true.
Perfect. I love it. I love collaborating with you. I appreciate you. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for tuning into this week's episode. I hope that you're feeling expanded to what's possible for you, motivated to take action, and inspired about how you can start to own your energy. I share even more tools and resources on my introverts only email newsletter. By signing up, you not only get early access to the Ambitious Introvert products and services, but you also get brand new podcast episodes delivered straight to your inbox every Monday, meaning you'll never miss your weekly dose of introvert-friendly inspiration. Sign up now at theambitiousintrovert.com/newsletter or click the link in the show notes. See you next week.